The days that followed the social event brought a noticeable shift in Kale's attitude toward coffee, and humanity as a whole. What had once seemed like a dangerous mystery now intrigued him, sparking a desire to dig deeper into its role in human life. He began observing humans more closely, not just in relation to coffee but in how they interacted with each other and their environment. Every gesture, every conversation, every sip of the steaming beverage felt like a clue waiting to be deciphered. Ethan, the human student who had introduced Kale to the milder version of coffee, became an unexpected ally in this journey of discovery. Unlike Alex and Mia, whose explanations were often brief and practical, Ethan approached things with a storyteller's flair. He loved science fiction novels and interstellar diplomacy, which made him uniquely suited to bridge the gap between Earth and Zixor. Over casual chats during breaks or late-night study sessions, Ethan shared tales of humanity's quirks, both good and bad, and encouraged Kale to see the bigger picture behind everyday habits. One evening, as they sat together, in the university lounge, Ethan leaned forward conspiratorially. "You know," he said, his eyes twinkling with mischief, "coffee isn't just about staying awake or feeling good. It's part of our history, too." Kale tilted his head curiously. "History?" "Absolutely," Ethan replied, nodding enthusiastically. "Coffee has been around for centuries. People used to gather in coffee houses to discuss ideas, politics, even revolutions. It's where some of the greatest minds came up with groundbreaking theories." Kale blinked, processing this new information. On Zixor, traditions evolved slowly, shaped by generations of careful thought and deliberation. The idea of a single drink influencing such monumental events was staggering. "So, coffee inspires humans?" he asked hesitantly. "In a way, yes," Ethan said, smiling. "It gives them energy, sure, but it also creates spaces for connection and creativity. Imagine sitting in a cozy cafe, surrounded by people exchanging thoughts and dreams. That's powerful stuff." As Kale listened, he couldn't help but draw parallels to his own world. Back on Zixor, gatherings held similar importance, though they lacked the chaotic energy of human interactions. Rituals, they were serene and deliberate, designed to foster unity and balance. Perhaps coffee served a similar purpose here, albeit in a more dynamic and unpredictable manner. Their conversations weren't limited to coffee alone. Ethan introduced Kale to other aspects of human culture, from art and music to philosophy and technology. Each topic revealed another layer of complexity, painting a portrait of a species driven by curiosity and adaptability. Yet despite these differences, Kale found common ground in humanity's pursuit of meaning and connection. One afternoon, while walking through the campus quad, Kale noticed a group of students gathered around a table covered with flyers and pamphlets. Curious, he wandered closer and saw that they were promoting a campus initiative focused on sustainability. One flyer caught his eye. It featured a drawing of a coffee cup alongside the slogan, "Save the planet, sip responsibly." Intrigued, Kale picked it up and began reading. A young woman standing nearby noticed his interest and smiled warmly. "Hey there," she said. "Are you interested in eco-friendly practices?" Kale hesitated, unsure how to respond. He glanced at Ethan, who gave him an encouraging nod. I am learning about your world," he said finally. "This looks important." "It is," the woman replied, her enthusiasm evident. "We're trying to reduce waste by encouraging reusable cups and ethically sourced beans. Coffee production can have a big impact on the environment if we're not careful." Kale frowned, absorbing the information. He had never considered the environmental implications of coffee before. On Zixor, resources were managed meticulously to ensure harmony with nature. The idea of harming the planet for something as seemingly trivial as a drink troubled him deeply. That evening, Kale brought the flyer back to the dormitory and showed it to his companions. Nira, Vex, and Lyra listened intently as he explained what he'd learned. "Humans are aware of the harm their actions cause," Kyle said, his voice tinged with admiration. "And they are trying to fix it." Nira nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe, They are not so different from us after all. We value balance too. Vex crossed his arms, his light flickering faintly. But do they succeed? Or do they only talk about change? Kale sighed, acknowledging the validity of Vex's question. I don't know yet, but the fact that they try is hopeful. The next day, Kale decided to take action. Inspired by the sustainability initiative, he approached Alex and Mia with a proposal. Can we organize something to help humans understand our culture? He asked. Perhaps a seminar where both sides share ideas. Alex raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the suggestion. That's a great idea, he said after a moment. We could call it an intercultural exchange workshop. Humans and Zixorians working together. It's exactly what this program is about. Mia clapped her hands excitedly. Let's make it happen. We'll need a venue, materials, and volunteers. Do you think your friends would be interested? Kyle turned to Nira, Vex, and Lyra, who exchanged quick glances before nodding in agreement. We will join, Nira said confidently. It is important to teach others about Zixor. Over the next few days, the group worked tirelessly to plan the event. They reserved a large lecture hall on campus, created posters advertising the workshop, and reached out to both human and alien participants. Kale took charge of preparing a presentation about Zixorian customs, focusing on their emphasis on balance, harmony, and environmental stewardship. He included examples of rituals and traditions that mirrored the principles of sustainability promoted by the Coffee Initiative. On the day of the workshop, the lecture hall buzzed with excitement. Students, faculty members, and curious visitors filled the seats, eager to learn about life on Zixor. Kale stood nervously at the front of the room, his translucent form glowing softly under the stage lights. Beside him, Alex and Mia offered words of encouragement, while Ethan gave him a thumbs up from the audience. When it was time to begin, Kale took a deep breath and addressed the crowd. Thank you for coming today, he said, his voice resonating gently through the translation device. My name is Kale, and I am honored to share my world with you. For the next hour, Kale spoke passionately about Zixorian culture, using visuals and demonstrations to illustrate key concepts. He explained how their society prioritized balance, not just within themselves but with the natural world. He highlighted the importance of rituals that strengthened community bonds and ensured long-term sustainability. The audience listened intently, occasionally murmuring in awe or nodding in understanding. Afterward, it was the humans' turn to present. Several speakers discussed various aspects of Earth's culture, from technological advancements to artistic expressions. One student even gave a heartfelt speech about the role of coffee in fostering connections, a nod to Kale's earlier fascination. By the end of the session, the room erupted into applause, signaling the success of the event. As Kale stepped down from the stage, Ethan approached him with a wide grin. You did amazing, he said, patting Kale lightly on the shoulder. People are already talking about how much they learned. Kyle smiled faintly, his glow brightening with pride. Thank you for helping me understand humans better, he replied sincerely. Without you, I might still believe coffee is deadly. Ethan laughed softly. Well, it's not exactly harmless, but it's also not the villain you thought it was. Sometimes the truth lies somewhere in between. Kale nodded, reflecting on everything he'd experienced since arriving on Earth. Coffee had started as a symbol of fear and misunderstanding, but it had become a gateway to deeper insights about humanity. Through it, he had learned not only about human strengths and weaknesses, but also about their capacity for growth and connection. That night, as Kale lay on his floating platform, he realized that his perspective had shifted dramatically. What once seemed chaotic and incomprehensible now appeared vibrant and full of potential. Humanity wasn't perfect, but neither was Zixor, or any civilization for that matter. The beauty lay in the effort, the constant striving to improve, to connect and to find meaning in the small moments. And perhaps, Kale thought as he drifted off to sleep, that was the true essence of life itself. The next morning, Cale woke earlier than usual, his translucent body glowing faintly in the soft light of the dormitory. He had spent most of the night thinking about coffee, unable to shake the feeling that it held some deeper significance beyond what he'd been told. To truly understand its role in human life, he realized, he needed to see it from a different perspective. Maybe the humans weren't just reckless or addicted, they were using coffee for something more meaningful. But what? As the others began, stirring awake, Cale decided to take matters into his own hands. He quietly slipped out of the room before anyone could notice and made his way back to the cafe near campus. It was still early, and the streets were quiet except for the occasional hum of a passing vehicle. The cafe itself was nearly empty, save for a few patrons scattered around the tables. Kyle approached the counter cautiously, his glowing form drawing curious glances from the baristas. "Can I help you?" one of them asked, her voice warm but tinged with curiosity. Cale hesitated for a moment, then spoke softly. "I want to watch how coffee is made." The barista blinked in surprise, then smiled. "Sure thing," she said, gesturing toward the espresso machine behind her. "It's pretty simple once you get the hang of it." For the next hour, Cale observed intently as the barista demonstrated each step of the process. She ground the beans, measured out precise amounts of powder, and carefully brewed the liquid under high pressure. Steam billowed upward, filling the air with the rich aroma that Cale had come to associate with both fascination and fear. He noticed how meticulous the barista was, treating each cup like a work of art. There was pride in her movements, a sense of purpose that went beyond simply making a drink. When she finished, she handed him a small sample, not to drink, but to examine. Cale peered closely at the dark liquid, marveling at its texture and color. "Why do humans care so much about this?" he asked finally. "It's not just about the taste," the barista replied, leaning on the counter. "Coffee brings people together. It gives them energy when they need it most. And honestly, there's something comforting about holding a warm cup in your hands, especially on a cold day." Comfort. The word echoed in Cale's mind again, reminding him of Alex's explanation the previous evening. Could it really be that simple? Was coffee less about survival and more about connection, for both the body and the soul? By the time Cale returned to the dormitory, his companions were already up and waiting for him. Nira tilted her head curiously as he entered. "Where did you go?" she asked, her glow flickering faintly. "To learn," Cale replied simply. He recounted everything he'd seen and heard at the cafe, describing the care and precision that went into making coffee. "Humans treat it like it's important," he concluded, "not just because it wakes them up, but because it makes them feel good." Vex frowned, crossing his arms. "But why would they risk harm for comfort?" "That doesn't make sense," Cale sighed, his own light dimming slightly. "Maybe we don't understand because we've never needed it. On Zixor we have balance naturally. Humans might need coffee to find theirs, or at least part of it." Lyra nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. "So it's not just a drink. It's a tool, a way to cope with their world." "Exactly," Cale said, feeling a spark of clarity ignite within him. For the first time he began to see coffee not as a threat, but as a reflection of humanity's complexity. A species constantly striving to adapt and thrive despite its challenges. Later that day, Alex and Mia invited the aliens to join them for a social event hosted by the university. It was an informal gathering in the student lounge, complete with snacks, music, and plenty of coffee. Cale hesitated at first, unsure if he was ready to immerse himself further in human culture after his recent revelations. But curiosity got the better part of him, and he agreed to go along. The lounge was lively, filled with laughter and chatter. Students lounged on couches or stood in small groups, many clutching steaming cups. Kyle scanned the room, noticing how animated everyone seemed. Even those who appeared tired or stressed seemed to perk up after taking a sip of their drinks. It wasn't just physical energy. It was emotional, too. Coffee seemed to act as a bridge, bringing people closer together. Ethan, a human student with curly hair and glasses perched on his nose, noticed Kale standing off to the side and approached him with a friendly smile. "Hey, you're one of the exchange students, right?" he asked, extending a hand. Kyle mirrored the gesture awkwardly, his tendrils brushing against Ethan's fingers. "Yes. My name is Kale." "I'm Ethan," the human replied, unfazed by the unusual handshake. "How are you finding Earth so far?" "It's complicated," Kyle admitted, his glow flickering faintly. "Everything here is so fast, so loud." Ethan laughed softly. "Yeah, Earth can be overwhelming at first, but you get used to it. What's been the hardest part for you?" Kale hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Coffee," he said simply. To his surprise, Ethan didn't laugh or dismiss him. Instead, he nodded knowingly. "Ah, yeah. Coffee confuses a lot of people, even humans sometimes. Why does it interest you so much?" Kale explained his observations, sharing what he'd learned about caffeine, addiction, and the social aspects of coffee consumption. Ethan listened intently, occasionally nodding or asking follow-up questions. When Kale finished, Ethan grinned. "You know, you're asking all the right questions. Coffee isn't perfect, but it's kind of amazing when you think about it. It's science, tradition, and community all rolled into one." "Community?" Kale echoed, intrigued. "Definitely," Ethan said. "Think about it. People bond over coffee. Whether it's catching up with friends, meeting coworkers, or even studying late at night, coffee creates moments of connection. It's not just fuel, it's a shared experience." Kale mulled this over silently. The idea of coffee as a unifying force resonated with him deeply. On Zixor, rituals and traditions served similar purposes, fostering harmony and understanding among their kind. Perhaps humans weren't so different after all. They just expressed their need for connection in unique ways. As the evening wore on, Kyle found himself relaxing more than he expected. He watched as Alex introduced Nira, Vex, and Lyra to other students, encouraging them to mingle and ask questions. Slowly, the aliens began to open up, sharing stories about Zixor and learning about Earth in return. Kale noticed how natural it felt, how easy it was to connect once barriers started to fall. At one point, Ethan returned with 2 cups in hand. "Here," he said, offering one to Kale. "This is a mild version of coffee. Just try it. No pressure." Kale stared at the cup uncertainly, his pulse quickening faintly. He glanced at Ethan, who gave him an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, Kale raised the cup to his translucent lips and took the smallest sip possible. The liquid was warm and surprisingly smooth, with a hint of bitterness that lingered on his senses. It wasn't unpleasant, in fact it was strangely invigorating. "Well?" Ethan asked, raising an eyebrow. Kyle paused, considering his response. "It's interesting," he said finally, his glow brightening slightly. "Not deadly, as I thought." Ethan laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Told you. Humans may be weird, but we're not suicidal." Kale managed a small smile, feeling a newfound appreciation for the complexities of human nature and their beloved coffee. Though he still had much to learn, he realized that understanding didn't always come from avoiding fears. Sometimes it came from confronting them head-on. That night, as Kale drifted off to sleep, he reflected on the day's events. Coffee had gone from being a source of terror to a symbol of discovery. It represented not only humanity's flaws, but also their resilience. A reminder that even in chaos there was beauty to be found. And perhaps, Kale thought, that was the true essence of Earth. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity for Kale and his fellow Zexorian students. Each morning, they woke early to join Alex and Mia on campus tours, lectures, and group activities designed to immerse them in human culture. But no matter how much they learned about Earth's customs, one thing continued to dominate Kale's thoughts: coffee. It was everywhere, on every corner, in every hand, and in every conversation. Humans talked about it casually, as though it were nothing more than water or air. Yet to Kale, it remained a mystery wrapped in danger. Kale's obsession with coffee didn't go unnoticed by Alex and Mia. On the third day of their stay, as they sat together in the university library, Alex leaned back in his chair and raised an eyebrow at Cale. "You've been staring at my cup for 10 minutes, he said with a chuckle. "What's going on in that alien brain of yours?" Cale blinked, startled out of his trance. He hadn't realized how obvious his fixation had become. I am just curious," he replied hesitantly, his glowing form dimming slightly under Alex's amused gaze. "Humans seem so attached to this drink. Why do you need it so much?" Alex shrugged, taking another sip from his steaming mug. "Like I said before, it keeps us awake. Helps with focus, too. You know, life gets busy sometimes." "Busy?" Kyle echoed, tilting his head. "But why can't you simply rest when you're tired? Isn't sleep enough?" Mia chimed in, setting down her own cup. "Well, yeah, sleep is important, but there's always something to do. Work, school, hobbies. Coffee gives us a little boost to keep going." Kyle frowned, struggling to understand. The concept of needing external assistance to function felt foreign and unsettling. Back on Zixor, life moved at a slower pace. Tasks were completed methodically without rushing. If someone grew tired, they rested. There was no need for artificial stimulants. To rely on something like coffee seemed unnatural, even reckless. Later that afternoon, during a break between activities, Cal decided to investigate further. While Alex and Mia chatted with Nira, Vex, and Lyra about upcoming events, Cale wandered off toward the cafe they'd visited earlier. Inside, he found himself drawn to the counter once again, studying the menu board as if it held secrets to humanity's survival. A barista noticed him lingering and approached with a smile. "Can I help you?" she asked kindly. Kyle hesitated, unsure how to phrase his question. Finally, he settled on something simple. "Why does coffee make humans feel better?" The barista laughed softly. "Oh, it's not magic or anything, it's just caffeine. It's a natural compound found in coffee beans. People use it to feel more alert and energized." "Caffeine," Kyle repeated slowly, committing the word to memory. "And this caffeine? Does it harm humans over time?" The barista tilted her head thoughtfully. "Not really, as long as you don't overdo it. Too much caffeine can make you jittery or mess with your sleep, but most people handle it fine." Cale nodded politely, though her explanation only deepened his confusion. How could something both energize and disrupt? And why would anyone willingly risk such side effects? Still, he thanked the barista and returned to the group, his mind racing with possibilities. That evening, back at the dormitory, Cale gathered his companions to share what he'd learned. They huddled together in their shared living space. There, soft glows illuminating the room. "Coffee contains something called caffeine," Kyle began, his voice low and serious. "It makes humans feel alert and energetic. But it also has risks." Nira frowned, her light flickering faintly. "So it's not deadly?" "It might be," Cale replied. "The human said it could cause problems if used too much. Maybe it builds up in their systems over time, weakening them." Vex crossed his arms, or rather the translucent appendages that served as arms, and shook his head. "That doesn't explain why they keep drinking it. If it's harmful, wouldn't they stop?" Lyra interjected, her tone thoughtful. "Maybe they don't have a choice. What if it's addictive? Like the substances we studied in biology class. Once they start, they can't quit." Kyle nodded grimly. "That must be it. Humans are trapped by their dependence on coffee. They think it helps them, but really it's harming them." Their discussion was interrupted by a knock at the door. Alex poked his head inside, grinning. "Hey guys, we're heading out for dinner soon. Want to come?" Reluctantly, the aliens agreed, though their minds remained preoccupied with coffee. Over dinner at a nearby restaurant, Cale couldn't resist bringing up the topic again. This time, he directed his questions to Mia. "Do all humans drink coffee?" he asked cautiously. Mia chuckled, wiping her mouth with a napkin. "Not all of them. Some prefer tea or energy drinks. But yeah, a lot of people love coffee. It's kind of a cultural thing." Cultural? Kale echoed, puzzled. What does that mean? It means it's part of their daily lives, Alex explained. Like how you might have traditions or rituals on your planet. For humans, drinking coffee is often social. People meet up at cafes to chat, work, or relax. Kale mulled this over silently. If coffee was tied to social behavior, perhaps its dangers weren't immediately apparent. Maybe humans consumed it not because they needed it, but because it brought them closer together. The idea intrigued him, though it didn't entirely ease his concerns. After dinner, as they strolled back to the dormitory, Kyle noticed a man sitting alone on a park bench, cradling a paper cup in his hands. His shoulders slumped, and his expression was weary. Kyle stopped walking, watching the man intently. Was this what coffee did to humans in the end? Did it leave them drained and dependent? Alex noticed Kale's hesitation and followed his gaze. "Oh, that guy," he said lightly. "He probably just had a long day. Coffee won't fix everything, you know." Kale turned to look at Alex, his glow flickering uncertainly. "Then why do humans keep using it? If it doesn't truly solve their problems?" Alex sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I guess it's complicated. Coffee isn't a cure-all, but it helps people get through tough moments. It's comforting in a way, like having a warm blanket or listening to your favorite song. Comforting." The word resonated with Kale, though he still struggled to fully grasp its meaning. Comfort wasn't something Zixorians sought externally. Their emotions were balanced naturally without the need for distractions or aids. Yet here were humans, turning to a heated beverage for solace. Perhaps their reliance on coffee wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. Back at the dormitory, Kyle lay awake that night, replaying the day's events in his mind. He thought about the barista's explanation, Alex and Mia's insights, and the weary man on the park bench. Slowly, a new theory began to form in his mind. Maybe coffee wasn't purely toxic or addictive. Maybe it represented something deeper about humanity, a species driven by complexity, imperfection, and the constant search for balance. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light through the window, Kyle resolved to learn more. He couldn't dismiss coffee as merely dangerous or useless. There was more to it than met the eye, and understanding it might be the key to unlocking the mysteries of human nature. The university campus buzzed with activity as Kale and his fellow Zixorian students followed Alex and Mia through its sprawling grounds. The buildings loomed tall, their glass windows reflecting the sunlight in dazzling patterns that made Kale squint uncomfortably. Humans hurried past them, clutching books, laptops, and those mysterious steaming cups of coffee. Every step felt like a new discovery for the aliens, but none of it seemed to ease Kale's growing unease. His glowing veins pulsed faintly, betraying his anxiety. Alex led the group toward a small cafe nestled between two academic buildings. "This is one of our favorite spots," he said, gesturing toward the cozy shop. "You'll love it here." Kyle exchanged wary glances with Nira, Vex, and Lyra. None of them had any idea what to expect, but they knew better than to question their human guides too much. At least, not yet. They didn't want to seem rude or ungrateful on their first day. Inside the cafe, the air was warm and carried the rich aroma of roasted beans. It wasn't unpleasant exactly, but it was overpowering to Kale's sensitive senses. He felt as though the smell itself could seep into his translucent skin and alter him somehow. The room was filled with humans sitting at wooden tables, typing furiously on their devices or chatting animatedly. Some held the steaming cups close to their faces, inhaling deeply before taking sips. Others cradled their drinks protectively, as if guarding something precious. Mia approached the counter and turned to face the aliens with a bright smile. "What do you guys want to try?" she asked. Her tone was friendly, but Kale hesitated. How could he possibly choose when he didn't even know what these beverages were? He glanced at the menu board above the counter, covered in strange names like latte, espresso, and cappuccino. The words meant nothing to him, but the descriptions only deepened his confusion. What did bold or smooth taste mean? And why would anyone willingly consume something described as bitter? Before Kale could respond, Alex stepped. "Let me order for everyone," he said confidently. Turning back to the barista, he rattled off a list of drinks: lattes for Mia and himself, an espresso shot for good measure, and a plain black coffee for the aliens to share. "Trust me," Alex added, flashing another reassuring grin. "You've got to start somewhere." Kyle watched nervously as the barista prepared the drinks. Steam hissed loudly from machines, and the rhythmic clinking of cups and saucers echoed through the cafe. When the drinks were finally ready, Alex handed Kale a small cup filled with dark liquid. The surface shimmered slightly, and tendrils of steam curled upward, disappearing into the air. Kale stared at it, his translucent fingers trembling ever so slightly as he held the container. "Go ahead," Alex encouraged. "Take a sip." Kale recoiled instinctively, nearly dropping the cup. "Is this safe?" he asked hesitantly, his voice resonating softly through the translation device. Alex blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Of course it's safe," he replied with a laugh. "People drink this stuff every day. It's just coffee." But Kale wasn't convinced. To him, the act of drinking something so hot and seemingly volatile was reckless at best and suicidal at worst. He glanced around the cafe again, observing the humans who sipped their drinks without hesitation. One man winced after taking a gulp, setting the cup down with a grimace. Another woman sighed contentedly, closing her eyes as if savoring the experience. These reactions only fueled Kale's suspicions. If coffee caused such varied responses, surely it couldn't be entirely harmless. Nira leaned closer to Kale, her soft glow flickering faintly. "Do you think it's some kind of toxin?" she whispered, her voice barely audible even through the translator. Kale nodded slowly, his expression grim. "It must be," he murmured. "Why else would they endure such discomfort?" Vex chimed in, his own light pulsing rapidly. "Maybe it's addictive," he suggested. "Like the substances we studied in biology class. Once they start, they can't stop." Lyra shuddered visibly. "That makes sense," she said quietly. "Look at how many of them are drinking it. It's everywhere." Their whispered conversation went unnoticed by Alex and Mia, who were busy discussing their next stop on the tour. Oblivious to the aliens' growing alarm, Mia picked up her latte and took a long sip, smiling blissfully. "Ah, perfect," she said, setting the cup back down. "Nothing beats a good coffee break." To Kale, the scene was almost comical, if it weren't so terrifying. Here were humans casually consuming what appeared to be a dangerous substance, completely unfazed by its potential risks. Did they not realize the harm they were inflicting upon themselves? Or worse, were they aware and simply didn't care? The thought sent a chill through Kyle's form, his glow dimming slightly. Determined to get answers, Kyle turned to Alex. "Why do humans drink this coffee?" he asked carefully, choosing his words to avoid sounding accusatory. Alex shrugged, nonchalantly. "It helps us stay awake," he explained. "Especially during exams or late-night study sessions, plus it tastes great once you're used to it." "Stay awake?" Kale frowned, trying to process the information. Weren't humans already awake? Why would they need assistance with something so basic? And if staying awake required ingesting a heated bitter liquid, what did that say about their natural state? Perhaps humans were inherently fragile creatures, reliant on artificial means to function properly. The idea troubled Kale deeply. As they left the cafe and continued their tour, Kale couldn't shake the image of the steaming cups from his mind. Everywhere they went, humans carried coffee with them. In classrooms, hallways, even outdoor courtyards. It was as though the beverage had become an extension of their bodies, a necessary part of their daily routine. Kyle found himself staring at the drinkers, searching for signs of distress or deterioration. But aside from occasional grimaces or sighs, they all seemed perfectly fine. By the time they returned to the dormitory where the aliens would be staying during their exchange program, Kale's head was spinning with questions. That night, as he lay on his makeshift bed, a floating platform designed to mimic the gravity conditions of Zixor. He recounted everything he'd seen to his companions. Nira, Vex, and Lyra listened intently, their lights flickering in agreement. "We have to be careful," Kyle warned solemnly. "If humans are willing to poison themselves with this coffee, who knows what other dangers we might encounter here." His words hung heavy in the air, casting a shadow over their excitement about exploring Earth. Though none of them had tasted the mysterious brew themselves, its presence loomed large in their thoughts. Coffee had become more than just a drink. It was a symbol of everything strange, unpredictable, and potentially perilous about humanity. And Kale couldn't help but wonder, if they survived this cultural exchange program, would they ever look at coffee, or humans, the same way again? The spaceship descended quietly through the Earth's atmosphere, its sleek silver body shimmering faintly as it adjusted to the planet's gravity. Inside, a group of alien students sat nervously, their translucent bodies glowing softly with anticipation and anxiety. They were from Zixor, a distant world where everything moved slowly, carefully, and in perfect harmony. For them, Earth was a chaotic mystery, a place full of unpredictable creatures known as humans. These aliens had been chosen for an important mission, to participate in an intergalactic cultural exchange program. Their task was simple in theory but daunting in practice, to learn about human culture, share their own customs, and hopefully build bridges between their two species. Kyle, the leader of the group, felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. He was young by Zixorian standards, barely out of his equivalent of adolescence, but he had earned this role through his sharp mind and calm demeanor. His skin pulsed faintly with a bluish light, a sign of his nervous energy. Beside him sat Nira, Vex, and Lyra, each equally anxious yet eager to explore this new world. None of them had ever seen humans up close before, only images transmitted via ancient cosmic broadcasts that depicted strange rituals involving fire, loud noises, and peculiar clothing. As the ship landed gently on a grassy field near a large university campus, Kale peered out the window at the sprawling buildings and bustling streets beyond. Humans hurried back and forth, some carrying bags, others clutching cups filled with steaming liquid. The sight made Kyle uneasy. What could possibly be so urgent that these beings couldn't slow down? Everything about Earth seemed rushed, chaotic, almost dangerous. A door opened, and sunlight poured into the ship, momentarily blinding the aliens. Shielding their sensitive eyes, they stepped outside cautiously, their webbed feet sinking slightly into the soft grass. A warm breeze brushed against their delicate forms, carrying unfamiliar scents, flowers, asphalt, food cooking somewhere nearby. It was overwhelming. Kyle took a deep breath, or what passed for breathing among his kind, and reminded himself why they were here. This wasn't just about curiosity, it was about survival. If Zixorians wanted to thrive in the universe, they needed to understand other civilizations, and perhaps even find ways to coexist peacefully. Their human guides arrived shortly after, walking briskly toward them across the field. One was male, tall and lean with short brown hair, wearing a casual jacket over a plain t-shirt. His name was Alex. The other was female, shorter than Alex but equally energetic, her dark curls bouncing as she moved. Her name was Mia. Both looked friendly enough, though their wide smiles unnerved Kale slightly. Were they trying too hard? Or was this simply how humans expressed goodwill? "Welcome to Earth," Alex said cheerfully, extending a hand toward Kale. Unsure of the gestures, meaning Kale hesitated before mimicking it awkwardly. Their hands didn't quite touch. Kyle's fingers were more like tendrils, but the effort seemed appreciated. Mia giggled softly, covering her mouth with one hand. "Don't worry," she said. "You'll get used to all this soon." Kale nodded politely, though privately he doubted it. How could anyone adapt to such a frenetic environment? Still, he forced himself to focus. First impressions mattered, especially when dealing with an entirely different species. "Thank you for welcoming us," he replied, his voice resonating, softly rather than speaking in words. Thanks to advanced translation devices embedded in their suits, his message came through clearly to Alex and Mia. With formalities out of the way, Alex gestured toward the university campus visible in the distance. "Let's head over there," he suggested. "We've got a lot to show you guys today." Kyle glanced at his companions, who exchanged uncertain looks. None of them had expected things to move so quickly. Nevertheless, they followed Alex and Mia as they led the way, pointing out various landmarks along the path. The walk itself was enlightening, if somewhat exhausting for the aliens. Every step revealed something new and baffling. There were vehicles zooming past at alarming speeds, emitting loud honking sounds whenever another vehicle came too close. Pedestrians chatted animatedly into handheld devices or listened to music through tiny earpieces. Street vendors sold snacks wrapped in colorful packaging, while birds chirped overhead, oblivious to the commotion below. At one point, they passed by a small cafe tucked between two larger buildings. Through the glass windows, Cale noticed rows of people sitting at tables, hunched over laptops or engaged in conversation. What caught his attention most, however, were the cups they held in their hands. Steam rose steadily from these containers, curling upward like ghostly tendrils. Some individuals sipped cautiously, wincing as if burned, while others gulped greedily without hesitation. Whatever was inside those cups, it appeared to hold great significance for the humans. "What are they drinking?" Cale asked curiously, nodding toward the cafe. Alex turned to look, then grinned. "Oh, that's coffee," he explained. "It's pretty popular around here. Keeps people awake during long days." "Awake?" Cale frowned, puzzled. Weren't humans just a discomfort? Yet everyone seemed perfectly fine moments later, chatting and laughing as though nothing unusual had happened. It didn't make sense. By the time they reached the main entrance of the university, Cale's mind was racing with unanswered questions. Coffee, whatever it was, clearly played a central role in human life, or at least in this particular corner of it. But why? And more importantly, was it safe? The thought lingered uncomfortably in his thoughts as Alex ushered them inside, promising a full tour of the facilities. Little did Cale know, this mysterious drink would become the focal point of his entire experience on Earth, and perhaps the key to unlocking deeper truths about humanity itself.
Precision shot, hitting a glowing panel on the probe's underside. Sparks flew as the ship faltered, then crashed into an abandoned parking lot. The team moved in quickly, weapons drawn. Up close.
No. This mysterious drink would become the focal point of his entire experience on Earth, and perhaps the key to unlocking deeper truths about humanity itself.